Well, it's been a couple of weeks since we last checked in on Sister Wives, now that season 20 is wrapped. But I wanted to circle back to a story I've been following about Christine Woolley's daughter, and also give you a quick update on Janelle Brown's home in a bit. Let's start with Christine's daughter, Isabel. Last year, Isabel was sued over a car accident. And when I tell you this lawsuit was bananas, I mean it. From the moment it was filed, it felt strange. Here's what the woman claimed. She said Isabel caused a chain reaction crash. According to the lawsuit, Isabel rear-ended one car. That car then hit another, and eventually 3 cars ahead, the woman who filed the lawsuit was rear-ended. But instead of suing the person who actually hit her, this woman sued Isabel, and here's the kicker. The lawsuit was filed 2 years after the accident happened. 2 years. The woman claimed she suffered injuries and was seeking damages. Isabel, once she hired an attorney, denied the claims. She denied causing the woman's injuries and denied that she was at fault for what happened 3 cars ahead of her. And honestly, that makes sense. You're responsible for your own vehicle, not for what happened several cars up the line. At the time, we talked about this on the channel and said, something about this feels off. Was it possible the woman knew Isabel's mom is Christine Brown? Was she thinking there might be money involved? Why wait 2 years? And why sue Isabel directly instead of going through her insurance company? Especially because in Utah, which is a no-fault state, drivers are required to carry their own insurance and liability coverage specifically for situations like this. So things went back and forth for a while. Isabel changed attorneys a few times. Seemed messy and stressful, the kind of thing no one wants hanging over their head. Then, in late fall of 2025, something big happened. Allstate, Isabel's insurance company, officially stepped into the case. And when they did, everything changed. Instead of Isabel handling this on her own, Allstate's legal team came in strong. They issued a 75-page subpoena for the woman's medical records. Not just one clinic, multiple clinics. They requested work records. Then they scheduled a deposition. And within just 2 or 3 months of those requests, Isabel's deposition was suddenly canceled. That's when you start to feel the shift. Then this week, a new filing appeared. A request for dismissal. Court documents stated that Isabel Paige Brown, through her counsel and under Rule 7K4, submitted a stipulation for dismissal with prejudice. On February 17, both the plaintiff, Heather Landva-Durr, and Isabel agreed to dismiss the case with prejudice. Now that phrase is important. With prejudice means the case is over. Done. Cannot be filed again. Then another form clarified the agreement. The case would be dismissed with prejudice, and each party would pay their own legal costs. Let's pause there. When each side pays their own fees and there's no settlement mentioned, that usually means one thing: there was no payout, no check, no quiet agreement behind the scenes. So what likely happened? Either the medical records didn't support the injury claims, or the deposition didn't go the way the plaintiff hoped, or Allstate reviewed everything and decided this case had no real legal standing. Insurance companies are not eager to pay out claims they believe are weak or exaggerated. If they think something isn't legitimate, they push back hard. And in this case, once Allstate stepped in, the lawsuit quickly unraveled. The result? Isabel's case, filed 2 years after the accident, was dismissed with prejudice. No liability, no settlement. Case closed. Honestly, this one always raised red flags for me. The timing, choice of defendant, the delay, just didn't add up. So here's a friendly little takeaway. If you're ever sued over a car accident, call your insurance company immediately. That's literally why you pay them. You shouldn't be navigating that alone. They have legal teams for this exact reason. And in Isabel's situation, it looks like Allstate showed up in the 11th hour and quite frankly saved the day. Alright, I'll stop here. So honestly, good for Isabel. What a nightmare to have hanging over your head. Being sued is stressful enough, but being sued over something that already felt questionable? That's exhausting. So it's a really positive outcome that the case was dismissed with prejudice. No liability. No settlement. No cloud over her name. Done and done. And credit where it's due. The legal team stepped in and handled it in a way that clearly worked in her favor. Alright, let's shift gears to Janelle Brown. Recently, Janelle's been getting a little heat online. Some viewers feel like she did something wrong to marry, and there's been this subtle shift where parts of the audience seem to be turning on her. I'm not entirely sure why it's happening now, especially since so much of that history is years old, but public opinion can change fast when you're on reality TV. Still, Janelle doesn't seem rattled. In fact, she's focused on something big. Her new home is almost finished. And the update she shared? It was powerful. She wrote that she's getting closer to moving day and that her heart is exploding. She said this home represents more than just a place to live. It's the first space she's chosen without needing agreement or permission. Every decision, the land, the layout, the timing was hers. She admitted something really honest too. What stopped working for her was waiting to feel certain before committing. She had to learn to trust herself instead. She called the house proof that she can choose and support herself. Now pause for a second. She's 55 years old and saying this is the first time she's bought a home without needing someone else's approval. That's a big statement. Now technically, she did purchase a home in Wyoming after separating from Kody, and he didn't seem directly involved in that. But in more recent years, it's fair to say many major decisions required bending to Kody's rules and demands. So this moment feels symbolic for her. There's also this tone in her recent posts that almost hints at something bigger, maybe even that her time on the show could be winding down. Subtle, but it's there. And then she addressed the criticism head-on. She wrote that when your life has been public, people think they know the whole story. For a long time, there was a version of her that made sense to viewers. It was familiar, recognizable. But she changed, and growth doesn't always match the storyline. That line right there? That's real. She said the true rebuilding didn't happen on camera. It happened in quiet decisions no one else saw. No explaining, no proving, just learning to trust her own thinking again. That's where independence begins. In another caption, she talked about how when parts of your life are visible, people assume they understand all of you. But growth doesn't always announce itself publicly. Sometimes it's subtle, choosing differently, thinking differently, releasing expectations that no longer fit. She said her biggest changes weren't dramatic. They were private. Small, steady moments where she trusted her judgment without needing validation. And honestly, that message will probably resonate with a lot of women leaving difficult relationships, or even just major life transitions. Especially women leaving polygamy or controlling dynamics. There's something hopeful about seeing someone rebuild at 55. Now, here's where things get interesting. Janelle has historically resisted saying polygamy itself was the problem. She hasn't framed her experience as leaving a cult in the way some others have. And I do wonder, when she talks about being more honest with herself, does that eventually mean being more transparent with the audience too? That's not calling her a liar. It's acknowledging that when someone has been deeply indoctrinated in a system where image and loyalty mattered, it can take years to unpack what was real, what was survival, and what was belief. One thing I personally wish she'd talk about more is the number of times she left Kody over the years. That story could be incredibly powerful for women watching. The reality that leaving isn't always one clean break. Sometimes it's several attempts before it sticks. She also shared another reflection that stood out. After big transitions, women often think they're stuck because they're afraid. But she said what she sees in herself and in women she works with is something quieter, the loss of structure. When no one else is setting the rules anymore, you're suddenly face to face with your own decisions. And that can feel disorienting even if you're capable. That's such a relatable idea. Sometimes it's not fear. It's just silence. Face. No blueprint. She said what moved her forward wasn't bravery or certainty. It was allowing herself to choose without waiting for confidence to show up first. If you're in a pause right now, she wrote, nothing has gone wrong. You're learning to trust yourself again. She even shared digital posts that said it's the constant second-guessing, wondering if you're allowed to choose something different now. That's hardest. Through everything changes, you're making decisions without the old structure. And that silence can feel unsettling. What stopped working for her was waiting to feel ready. 'Cause that moment never came. What helped her? Realizing confidence doesn't come first. And honestly, that's a lesson a lot of people don't learn until much later in life. Alright, I'll pause here. She said something that really stuck with me. Confidence doesn't come first. It's built by choosing and then choosing again. Being stuck isn't failure. It's just a pause before self-trust catches up. And I think that's powerful. Now, here's where I'm going to gently share my perspective. For me, part of Janelle's continued growth would be fully acknowledging that she was in a cult. That's not meant as an insult. It's an observation about high-control religious groups. Before she even joined, some of her family members tried to warn her. They were worried. They saw red flags. From years of covering high-control groups, I can tell you this: leaving one is incredibly disorienting. Inside those systems, so much is decided for you. How to think, how to feel, what to wear, what to watch, who to spend time with, sometimes even how to style your hair or manage your money. There's a rule book for everything, and when you're inside, it can feel comforting. You don't have to wrestle with big decisions, you just follow the structure. There's also often a promised reward. In this case, the idea of reaching the celestial kingdom, coming better, achieving perfection. Janelle has always had that self-improvement mindset. She seems to genuinely want to grow and become her best self. That drive fits closely with the culture she came from. First, mainstream LDS teachings about striving for perfection, and then an even more rigid version of those beliefs within fundamentalist polygamy. But now she's deconstructing. And for anyone who leaves a high-control group, decision-making becomes a muscle you have to rebuild. Some women leave without ever having chosen their own clothes freely. Making a purchase without permission can feel huge. Building a house without checking whether every detail is approved or ordained can feel overwhelming. Even something as basic as realizing, if I walk away, I'm not evil, I'm not doomed, I'm not damned, can take years to fully accept. That's where the depression can hit, because when you leave, you may feel like you failed. And in systems that revolve around perfection, failure feels catastrophic. To me, the real milestone for Janelle won't just be buying a house. It'll be the moment she truly understands she doesn't have to be her best self all the time. She doesn't have to be perfect. She doesn't have to frame everything as growth or self-optimization. It may eventually mean openly acknowledging the harm, acknowledging the untruths she was taught, maybe even admitting the ways she participated in promoting something that wasn't healthy, whether knowingly or not. I was listening to McKelty and Tony on their Patreon recently, and Tony said something interesting. The show continues. He'd like to see more honesty about what the group really was, and conversations that might actually help other women leave. That kind of honesty is hard. It's hard to admit you were wrong. It's hard to admit you were manipulated. It's hard to say, I believed something that wasn't good for me. And it's even harder when pride is involved, when you don't want to feel deceived or admit you may have unintentionally helped deceive others. But the shame doesn't belong to the people who were pulled in. It belongs to the people who built and enforced the system. Because perfectionism runs so deep in these environments, admitting the whole thing was flawed can feel like admitting personal failure. And here's something else we see sometimes. When people leave one high-control group, they can unintentionally drift toward another, or they channel all their energy into fixing others instead of sitting with their own healing. It's human. Sometimes it's easier to focus outward than inward. So my hope for Janelle isn't criticism, it's patience. I hope she continues doing the internal work, therapy, reflection, true deconstruction, before positioning herself as a guide for others. Healing deserves depth, not just momentum. We've seen Christine speak more openly about harm and deception. We've seen Mary acknowledge her own missteps. It takes time to get there, sometimes years. Janelle is moving forward. She's building a house. She's building independence. And maybe slowly she's building clarity too. Meanwhile, Isabel has officially beaten what looked like a shaky lawsuit and walked away with a clean slate. So now I'd love to hear from you. What are your thoughts on all of this? If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you do and click the bell so you never miss an update. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, besties.